Mayor James Mueller joins us in the studio this morning. We appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
This is a topic that is making national news as well. It's the immigration process that President Trump is now trying to implement, and we've already seen reports of some activity in places like Chicago and things like that. Is the city of South Bend prepared to take any action if, in fact, you are ordered to take action as far as an immigration sweep, detaining people, and the like?
Well, you know, we comply with federal and state law, and to detain someone in this country, you have to get a warrant and go through the judicial process. And so that's something that we will honor. If a court has determined that an individual needs to be detained, we'll of course follow suit. But as I've said before, the immigration policy is the federal government's responsibility. They need to put the resources to do that because our officers are busy. We got over 100,000 calls for service last year, and they're responding to different resident needs to keep our community safe. So they already got a full-time job. They're not sitting on their hands waiting for the federal government to tell them what to do.
So are you saying if an executive order is passed that the city, municipalities, counties, states, whatever, throughout the country are now ordered to help with the process of picking up these people, you will not comply with an executive order because there's no specifically a warrant from a court? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you know, is the executive order constitutional? If it's a constitutional directive from the federal government, then yes, we will of course comply. But if it is not, you know, there's due process for folks for a good reason. We have constitutional rights here for good reason. So if the executive order or if they overreach, that's something that the courts will determine. And so we will follow the law and we will follow what the courts direct.
So I'm reading between the lines here and I'm not trying to play a gotcha with the moment. I'm trying to figure out, I think we're all trying to figure out exactly how this is going to play out because it appears something is going to be happening here shortly. Are you going to say that the city of South Bend is not going to take any action until the courts rule on any executive order? In other words, that could be a weeks-long process, if not longer.
We are not in the business of detaining folks without the legal authority to do so. And so if there's the legal authority to do so, we will.
The president yesterday talked about the possibility of sanctuary cities, for example, Chicago, Denver, and some of those places, of having federal funding withheld from there. Are you at all concerned that if you do decide you get an order and you hold back on that before you implement it, because of a court ruling, whatever the case, about the issue of federal funding being stopped to the city of South Bend?
You know, these have been threatened, you know, this type of withholding federal funding for different policy has been tried by, you know, I think there's some Democrats that have tried that too for other policies. And generally, that's another thing that is not necessarily going to pass muster with the courts. So unfortunately, a lot of these things are going to get tied up in the judicial process, and we'll see what actually happens. But I don't think that that's going to be seen as a legitimate policy from any government, whether Democrat or Republican.
Last question on this, and we're just about out of time, but I wanted to ask you, if in fact it's ruled that this is a legal thing to do, that an executive order can stand, or whatever process it plays out, and the city of South Bend will decide to take part of this, have you had any discussions with the police department how this would work, who this would involve, where these people would be detained? Has there been any planning knowing that something like this is potentially coming?
This is the federal government's responsibility, so they're going to have to figure out where to put people. I mean, if this is what they want to do,
so
and they find the legal authority. So you've not had any advanced
discussions with Police Chief Ruskowski?
We are not, like I said, we are not in the business. We are trying to keep our community safe. We're focused on South Bend and our community, and so we don't have plans for new facilities or detention centers or any of that. Now, if the federal government does, that's for them to figure out.
Okay. South Bend Mayor James Mueller, we appreciate your time. It's a complicated and a convoluted issue, but it's on a lot of people's minds right now, especially in the migrant communities. We appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. 7:18, we'll be back.
I'm John Paul. Thanks for watching. Here's another video for you to watch. Also, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel.